The wind was sharp that evening, carrying with it the bitter smell of rain-soaked garbage and the faint whine of a city that never really slept. My shift at the warehouse had ended late again, and I trudged down the cracked pavement toward my tiny apartment. My jacket was thin, but it wasn't me I worried about. It was her. I first saw her crouched by the corner of the deli, a frail shadow tucked against a dumpster. The light above flickered, spilling a pale glow over her tangled hair and the hollowed look of her face. She couldn't have been more than 8 or 9, and her clothes, if you could call them that, were just rags clinging to skin and bone. "Hey," I called softly, careful not to startle her. Her eyes flicked up, wide, dark, and too old for her age. She didn't move. "You hungry?" I asked, holding out the bag of leftovers I'd stuffed from work. Half a sandwich, a bruised apple, and a soda. Her thin fingers twitched, then she snatched the bag and tore into it like a starving wolf. The sound of her chewing echoed in the alley, desperate and raw. My throat tightened as I watched. No kid should eat like that. "What's your name?" I asked gently. She swallowed hard, wiped her mouth with the back of her hand, and whispered, "Maya." I crouched down so my voice wouldn't carry. "Maya, do you have somewhere safe to sleep tonight?" Her answer was silence, but her eyes told the truth.
"No."
I wanted to press further, but before I could, she bolted. Like a frightened bird, she vanished into the darkness of the alley, leaving me staring after her, clutching the empty food bag. The days that followed dragged heavy with guilt. At work, I caught myself glancing toward the door every time I heard footsteps outside, hoping she'd come back. At night, I left extra food in the alley where I had seen her, but it always disappeared before morning. Then, on the third night, I opened my door and nearly stumbled back in shock. There she was, Maya, standing in the dim hallway. Only this time, she wasn't alone. Beside her was a woman who looked just as broken. Her skin was pale and drawn tight over sharp cheekbones, her hair brittle, and her arms wrapped protectively around Maya as if the girl were the only thing tethering her to life. Maya's voice was timid but determined. "This is my mom. We don't have anywhere.
Please, can we stay?"
Just one night." Her mom's lips parted as if to object, but she swayed on her feet, too weak to stand tall. My heart squeezed. I had little enough myself, just a paycheck-to-paycheck life, but looking at them, two souls already crushed under a weight no one should carry, I knew my decision. "Come in," I said softly, opening the door wider. The first night was quiet. They both collapsed onto the old couch, too exhausted even to speak. I brought them blankets, the only ones I had, and sat awake at the table long after they had fallen asleep, listening to the shallow breaths of people who hadn't known warmth in far too long. By morning, the smell of coffee filled the room, and I found Maya and her mom sitting at the table, watching me with a mix of fear and hope. Her mom finally spoke. "I'm Elena." Her voice cracked. We lost everything. Maya's father died years ago, and I couldn't keep up with the rent. We've been on the streets ever since." Her hands trembled as she spoke. I poured her coffee and slid over some toast, pretending not to notice the tears that slipped down her cheeks as she whispered, "Thank you." Days turned into a rhythm. I would head to work early, leaving food behind, and when I returned, the apartment felt less lonely. Maya's laughter began to brighten the air, fragile but real. Elena insisted on helping around the place, cleaning, cooking simple meals, even patching up my threadbare clothes with old sewing skills. At first, I thought they'd stay only a night or two, but then a week passed, then 2. Each day they remained. The place felt more alive. One evening, I came home to the smell of stew. Elena had somehow stretched the little we had into something warm and filling. Maya ran up to me, clutching a piece of paper. She'd drawn the three of us, me, her, and her mom, smiling inside the little apartment. "For you," she said, her eyes shining. I took it carefully, as if it were fragile glass. My throat burned with a mix of emotions I couldn't quite name. But not everything was easy. One night, Elena tried to leave. I found her by the door, clutching Maya's hand. "You've done too much already," she whispered. "We're just a burden. You shouldn't waste your life on us." I stood frozen, then shook my head firmly. "You're not a burden. You're people who needed help. And as long as I have a roof, so do you." Her lips quivered, and for the first time since I met her, she let herself cry openly. Maya pressed against her side, holding tight. Winter came harsh and cruel, but inside our small apartment, warmth lived again. Not just from the heater that barely worked, but from the laughter over shared meals, the quiet talks late at night, the simple comfort of not being alone anymore. One snowy evening, as we sat by the window watching flakes drift down, Elena looked at me with a softness I hadn't seen before. "You saved us," she whispered. "I don't know how to ever repay you." I shook my head. "You don't have to. Family isn't about owing. It's about staying." She smiled through her tears, and for once, there was no fear in her eyes, only peace. It's been months since that night Maya first begged me for help. My apartment isn't just mine anymore, it's ours. The walls that once echoed with silence now carry the sound of life, of laughter, of belonging. Sometimes I catch myself staring at the drawing Maya made, now taped proudly on the fridge. 3 figures, smiling together. And I realize what started as a single act of kindness has become something far greater. Not just a roof, not just a bed, but a home.